Blade Runner wasn't supposed to work. It was too weird, too expensive, too chaotic. Harrison Ford hated it. The studio wanted to kill it. The crew was miserable, but somehow it became a masterpiece. And behind the scenes, studio threats, cast warfare, stolen titles, a director losing his mind. Here are 20 insane facts about Blade Runner you didn't know. And they're stranger than the film itself. Fact 1. They literally stole the movie title. The name Blade Runner appears nowhere in Philip K. Dick's source novel, Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep? The studio literally stole it from William S. Burroughs' completely unrelated 1979 novella Blade Runner, a movie, which itself was based on Alan E. Norse's The Blade Runner. The production company bought the rights to these random books and threw away everything except the title because Dick's original title would have been Box Office Poison. Imagine asking for tickets to Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep? The theft worked brilliantly. The stolen title became legendary while the original source books were completely forgotten. This creative plagiarism set the precedent for Hollywood's willingness to prioritize marketability over source material authenticity throughout the entire troubled production. Fact 2. The set was built upside down on day 1. On the very first day of filming, Ridley Scott arrived to discover the elaborate interior columns had been constructed completely upside down. The set designer assumed that since cameras would never capture the ceiling, the sophisticated decorative ends should face the floor where they'd be visible. Scott became absolutely irate and forced the entire expensive set to be torn down and reconstructed from scratch. This costly mistake immediately set the tone for months of production chaos to come. The rebuilt set looked stunning in the final film, but the budget was already hemorrhaging money before a single scene was shot. Studio executives were furious about the waste. The upside-down construction became an omen of the disaster ahead. Fact 3. Studio executives threatened to pull the plug nightly. As the budget spiraled completely out of control, studio executives visited the set almost every single night like circling vultures. They would literally stand directly behind Scott while he directed scenes and tell him each take was good enough to move on. The completion guarantee clause meant Scott would permanently lose control of his own film if production went over budget or schedule. It definitely did both repeatedly. Every night became a tense negotiation for the film's survival. Scott was directing under constant siege, knowing each expensive shot could potentially be his last. The relentless pressure was suffocating, but Scott stubbornly refused to compromise his artistic vision, despite the daily threats to shut down production entirely. Fact 4. Philip K. Dick refused $400,000 to dumb down his own story. Dick was offered nearly $500,000 to write a novelization of his own story, but flatly refused the lucrative deal. The studio explicitly told him it would have to appeal to the 12-year-old audience and would be disastrous artistically. Dick was so furious about these dumbing down demands that he called his refusal a victory not just of contractual obligations but of theoretical principles. Instead of cashing in on easy money, he chose to watch the studio potentially butcher his complex vision. The studio was forced to reissue his original novel instead. Dick deliberately chose artistic integrity over financial gain, a principled decision that would continue haunting him as production spiraled into chaos and his story was adapted without his input. Fact 5. The producer's lucky day superstition backfired spectacularly. Producer Alan Ladd Jr. specifically chose June 25, 1982, as the release date because his previous highest-grossing films, Star Wars and Alien, had both opened on May 25th in 1977 and 1979 respectively. The 25th of any month had become his personal lucky day for major releases. The superstition backfired catastrophically when Blade Runner bombed with only a pathetic $6 million opening weekend. Superstition doesn't guarantee box office success, and the commercial disaster proved it brutally. The exact same date that had successfully launched 2 previous sci-fi classics became the day Blade Runner's commercial hopes died completely. Ladd's previously unbroken lucky streak was shattered, and the film's damaged reputation wouldn't recover for many years afterward. Fact 6. Harrison Ford and Sean Young literally couldn't stand each other. Ford reportedly ignored Young entirely throughout production for reasons she never understood. Young described a significant personality chasm between them, saying Ford basically pretended she didn't exist on set. Their romantic scenes turned into what crew members called hate scenes, because the animosity was so thick you could cut it with a knife. The chemistry was supposed to be electric between the leads. Instead, it became completely toxic. Ford's deliberate coldness made Young's performance more distant and robotic, which ironically worked perfectly for her replicant character. The mutual hatred created an uncomfortable tension that enhanced the film's themes. Sometimes the best performances come from genuine discomfort, and real interpersonal conflict rather than manufactured chemistry. Fact 7. Sean Young accused Ridley Scott of sexual harassment. Young alleged Scott propositioned her during filming, and when she rejected his advances, he punished her by forcing her to shoot completely irrelevant scenes that had nothing to do with the plot. She claimed Scott deliberately put her in harsh situations and made her professional life absolutely miserable after the rejection. Young felt trapped between Scott's alleged harassment and Ford's open hostility on set. The set became a toxic environment where the female lead was systematically isolated and targeted by both director and co-star. Young's serious accusations wouldn't surface publicly until many years later, but the immediate damage to her career was severe and lasting. The hostile work environment affected her performance and future opportunities. Fact 8. Harrison Ford deliberately sabotaged his own voiceover. Ford hated the studio-mandated narration so much that many believe he intentionally delivered it poorly, hoping it would be completely unusable. He called the recording process a funning nightmare and said he went kicking and screaming to the studio to record it. Ford was forced to recreate narration for people that did not represent the director's interests, according to his own statements. His deliberately monotone, disinterested delivery wasn't bad acting. It was calculated passive-aggressive sabotage against studio interference. The plan backfired spectacularly when the studio used his terrible performance anyway. Ford's vocal rebellion became an unintended part of cinema history, though definitely not in the way he originally intended it to work. Fact 9. The crew shot for 50 nights in artificial rain. Virtually every single scene was shot at night with crew call at late afternoon and wrap at 6 a.m. the following morning. The cast and crew endured months of grueling night shoots in artificially created rain, creating a miserable atmosphere Ford later described as one of his absolute worst filming experiences. The constant dampness, physical exhaustion, and completely reversed sleep schedules turned everyone into walking zombies. The massive rain machines ran continuously, soaking everything and everyone for hours each night. The atmospheric perfection came at the severe cost of human comfort and sanity. The crew's visible misery shows clearly in behind-the-scenes footage. They looked as dystopian and depressed as the film itself portrayed. Fact 10. Ridley Scott called Harrison Ford the biggest pain in the arse. In 2006, when directly asked who's the biggest pain in the arse you've ever worked with, Scott replied without hesitation, "It's got to be Harrison. He'll forgive me because now I get on with him, but he knows a lot, that's the problem." Scott admitted Ford was incredibly challenging because when we worked together it was my first film up and I was the new kid on the block. The animosity was legendary throughout Hollywood circles. Ford questioned every single decision, challenged every creative choice, and made Scott's directorial life absolutely hell during production. The two have since reconciled professionally, but their brutal on-set warfare nearly destroyed the film completely during shooting. Fact 11. Rutger Hauer rewrote cinema's greatest death scene the night before. Hauer called the original Tears in Rain speech opera talk and high-tech speech with no bearing on the actual film. He took a knife to the script the night before filming and cut it from several long paragraphs down to just 42 words total. The iconic line, "All those moments will be lost in time, like tears in rain," was entirely his own creation. He later said it came to him at 4 a.m. while thinking, "God damn it, I hope they don't want me to say these 300 words." Hauer's last-minute improvisation created one of cinema's most quoted death scenes ever. The original studio script would have been completely forgotten. His brilliant rewrite became immortal and is still quoted decades later. Fact 12. The crew applauded and cried. When Hauer delivered his improvised Tears in Rain monologue in a single take, crew members allegedly applauded and cried when the scene was completed. The emotional impact was so powerful that everyone immediately knew they had witnessed something truly legendary. Hardened film technicians who had seen everything were moved to tears by an android's final words about mortality. The profound silence that followed his performance was absolutely deafening. Then spontaneous applause erupted across the entire set. It was one of those magical moments that define careers and create film history permanently. Hauer had transformed a routine replicant death scene into pure poetry. The crew's immediate emotional reaction proved they had captured lightning in a bottle that would resonate for generations. Fact 13. Stanley Kubrick's The Shining footage was used for the happy ending. The studio-mandated happy ending, where Deckard and Rachel drive into the mountains, used leftover landscape footage from Stanley Kubrick's The Shining. Scott approached Kubrick, who was a genuine fan of Alien, and enthusiastically agreed to let him use the unused mountain vista shots for free. If taken literally, this means they're actually driving toward the Overlook Hotel from The Shining in the ending. The irony is absolutely perfect, a happy ending, borrowed from a horror film about isolation and madness. Kubrick's generous gesture helped Scott create an ending he personally hated, using footage from a film about psychological breakdown. The borrowed footage saved money but created an unintentionally dark subtext for viewers who recognized the source material. Fact 14. Scenes were shot 16 times with different lighting. Special effects engineers used a revolutionary technique where they would light and shoot a scene, rewind the film, then record over it with completely different lighting setups. This multi-pass exposure process was repeated up to 16 times for a single shot, creating the film's distinctive visual depth and layered atmosphere. Each pass added multiple layers of light and shadow that gave Blade Runner its unique, futuristic look. The technique was physically exhausting and extremely expensive, but it created visuals that still look futuristic today. No digital effects existed, just obsessive craftsmanship and multiple film exposures creating movie magic. The complex lighting required precise timing and coordination. This painstaking process contributed to budget overruns but achieved visual effects that remain unmatched decades later. Fact 15. The Unicorn Dream was Scott's secret clue. Deckard is a replicant. The Unicorn Dream sequence, combined with Gaff's origami unicorn gift, was Scott's subtle way of revealing that Deckard is actually a replicant. Gaff could only know about Deckard's specific dreams if they were implanted memories from the Tyrell Corporation. This detail has sparked decades of heated controversy, with Harrison Ford still vehemently disagreeing with Scott's interpretation. The unicorn wasn't just a dream, it was concrete evidence of artificial memory implantation. Scott buried this crucial revelation so subtly that most viewers missed it entirely on first viewing. The debate continues today, with fans permanently split between Ford's human Deckard and Scott's replicant theory. One tiny origami figure fundamentally changed everything about the character's identity and the film's meaning. Fact 16. Philip K. Dick died 4 months before seeing his vindication. Dick suffered a massive stroke on February 17, 1982, and died on March 2, 1982, exactly 4 months before Blade Runner's theatrical release. He had seen only 20 minutes of rough footage and called it super and dynamite, enthusiastically asking, "How did you know what was going on in my head?" The cruel irony was that just as his work was about to gain massive international recognition, he died before witnessing it. Dick's genuine enthusiasm for those brief 20 minutes of footage strongly suggested he would have absolutely loved the completed film. His unexpected death robbed him of witnessing his complete vindication and the massive Philip K. Dick revolution that followed in Hollywood. The timing was tragically perfect. Success arrived just too late for him to enjoy it. Fact 17. Dick's last words about the film were about action figures. After seeing the footage, Dick immediately called author Paul Salmon and said with childlike excitement, "I can't believe it. Where can I get a Deckard action figure?" This was reportedly one of his final enthusiastic statements about any adaptation of his work before his sudden death. Dick's genuine, childlike excitement about potential merchandising showed how completely the film had captured his imagination and approval. He went from being a skeptical, protective author to an excited fan in just 20 minutes of footage. The man who wrote brilliantly about artificial humans was absolutely thrilled by the idea of artificial Deckards being mass-produced. His innocent joy makes his untimely death even more tragic. He never got to see his beloved action figure or witness his story's massive cultural impact. Fact 18. The film spawned 7 different versions. Due to studio meddling, studio interference resulted in an unprecedented 7 different versions of Blade Runner being shown to audiences since its original release. These include the original work print, theatrical release, international version, director's cut, and final cut, among others. No other major film has been revised so extensively or repeatedly. Each version tells a slightly different story, creating a unique phenomenon where the real Blade Runner depends entirely on which version you've seen. The multiple cuts prove both the film's troubled birth and its enduring creative power. 7 different versions created 7 different experiences of the same masterpiece. The various cuts have become a film studies case study in studio interference versus artistic vision. This unprecedented revision history turned one film into a multimedia experience spanning decades. Fact 19. It started the Philip K. Dick Hollywood revolution. Despite its catastrophic initial box office failure, Blade Runner launched what author Paul M. Salmon calls the whole Philip K. Dick revolution in Hollywood. The film's eventual cult status led directly to major adaptations of Total Recall, Minority Report, A Scanner Darkly, and many others. Dick posthumously became one of the most frequently adapted sci-fi authors in cinema history. Studios that had completely ignored his work for decades suddenly saw pure gold in his paranoid visions of the future. Blade Blade Runner proved definitively that Dick's weird, philosophical sci-fi could work brilliantly on screen with proper treatment. The revolution he never lived to see made him a posthumous Hollywood legend. His stories became the foundation for modern sci-fi cinema, influencing countless films about artificial intelligence, reality, and identity. Fact 20. The happy ending was so bad. It became a meme before memes existed. Critics immediately identified the tacked-on happy ending as feeling completely out of place and not fitting the noir tone of the rest of the film. The ending became so universally notorious that when the director's cut was finally released, removing it was celebrated as much as removing Ford's hated narration. The happy ending is now considered a perfect cautionary tale about destructive studio interference in artistic vision. It was so obviously fake and jarring that audiences instinctively rejected it from day one. Before internet memes existed, the Blade Runner happy ending was already a widespread joke among film critics and fans. Its eventual removal became a major victory for artistic integrity over corporate cowardice. The bad ending, ironically, made the film's reputation stronger by demonstrating what studio meddling could destroy. It started as a disaster with upside-down sets, warring actors, and studio threats, but somehow that beautiful disaster became a masterpiece that changed cinema forever. The chaos created the classic. If you're into strange movie secrets and the insane stories behind Hollywood's biggest films, hit subscribe because we're just getting started. Trust me, it gets weirder from here.